Your love is kind. Your love is patient. You fill my heart with so much peace and joy. You're amazing. You make my life feel brand new. You're amazing. You make my life feel brand new. Jesus, you love me too much, oh. Too much, oh, too much, oh, excess love, oh. Jesus, you love me too much, oh. Too much, oh, excess love, oh. Jesus, you love me too much, oh. Too much, oh, excess love, oh. Jesus, you love me too much, oh. Too much, oh, excess love, oh. Your love is kind. Your love is patient. You fill my heart with so much peace and joy. You're amazing. You make my life feel brand new. All your promises are yes, and amen. You're not a man, you never lie. Jesus, you love me too much, oh. Too much, oh, excess love, oh. Jesus, you love me too much, oh. Too much, oh, excess love, oh. Jesus, you love me too much, oh. Too much, oh, excess love, oh. Jesus, you love me too much, oh. Too much, oh, excess love. Too much, oh, excess love. Your love for me too much, oh. Too much, oh, excess love, oh. Too much, oh, Jesus, you love me, oh, that you gave your life for me. What manner of love is this? What manner of love is this that you give it all for me, oh God? Jesus, you love me. You love me. You love me. Jesus, much, excess love. Yeah. Jesus, you love me too much. Oh. You love me too much. Oh. Unconditional love you ever need. Oh. Eloi, Eloi, my Sabbatai. You say it all for me. Oh. Thank you for loving me too much. Unconditionally, thank you for loving me too much. Thank you for loving me too much. Thank you for loving me too much. You love me too much. Your love is kind. Your love is patient.
And the spirit of life calling.
Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning if you're somewhere far in Asia. My name is Cyrus Gray, and as always, this is Lecture Central, the weekly edition of our tour about Liberia. Today's Father's Day, so I'd like to send out Peter for happy Father's Day to all the fathers of the world. Today we're going to be spending the first couple of minutes in our pre-show discussing something that is still pending in Liberia. Prosecution, the greater of $100 billion worth of drugs to Liberia. And we're going to be doing that in our pre-show in the discussion. Why were the accused drug traffickers set free in Liberia? Is it because of corruption, incompetence, or both? And on our main show today, we'll be running one of our people show on. So keep on us today in Lecture Central. Very soon, I will have with me my co-host, Council. So we'll get into this discussion. So let's begin our show with a rendition from one of our Latino artists. Then we're going to be rolling it's been around for a while. Out of the budget.
Hear these words and have faith. Have faith.
I can do well. David Miller, good morning. At this US app, as to
Yeah. D12 on the beat.
One love, yo. I don't know. I think
Papa? Why you keep blessing me like this? You favor me like you this. Still keep on protecting me like this. Yeah, you sustaining me like this. I'm so grateful, grateful, yeah. Say, I don't know what thing I do, Papa. Why you keep blessing me like this? And you keep favor me like this. You protecting me like this. And you sustaining me like this. I'm so grateful. Yeah, yeah. You give me plenty, plenty money. Too much data, fun cherry. You put food on my table, clothes on my body, and you share to me. You share for me, so I say, count your blessing, think them one by one, and you will know what thing that I can do. I'm so thankful, yeah, thankful, yeah. See, yeah, I'm so grateful, yeah. I used to be cocky on the carry. I didn't have no lyrics. They used to call me for nothing. Yeah, sister boy, but thank God you never left me down. No, you always spend it for me. So I raise my voice and say, I don't know. Now one thing I do, Papa, why you keep blessing me like this? You favor me like this. You keep on protecting me like this. You sustaining me like this. I'm so grateful, grateful God. Jehovah Jireh, yeah, my provider. Jehovah Rapha, yeah, my healer. Jehovah Shalom, yeah, oh my peace, my peace, my peace of mind. You are my strength, like no other. You are my song in the storm. I just wanna praise you and praise you, praise you. Let my voice to you, my give you praise, yeah. Woo. Say, I don't know. Now one thing I do, Papa, why you keep on blessing me like this? You keep on favoring me like this. You protecting me like this. You sustaining me like this. I'm so grateful, grateful God, grateful God. You give me plenty money, too much data, fun cherry. You put food on my table, clothes on my body, and you share to me, you share to me, you share to me. So I say, elevation back, you, promotion back, you, celebration back, you, blessing back, you, favor back, you. When it's plenty. Grateful, I'm grateful, God. Woo. Oh, I don't know. One thing I do, Papa, why you keep on blessing me like this? Oh, you favor me like this. Oh, you're loving me like this. Blessing me, blessing me. Oh, baby, grateful, Lord. Grateful. Oh, grateful.
Well, that was David Mel, a Liberian artist. I understand he's based in Canada. Real super singer. Check out all his tracks and download them, support him. Alfonso, happy Father's Day. Welcome to Election Central.
Thank you, Cyrus, and happy Father's Day to you, and happy Father's Day to all of the men out there. Whether or not you actually have a biological adopted child, if not, I think every man out there who supports every child or takes steps, to improve society is a father. So happy Father's Day to everybody.
Great. How was your week and what's happening up in the north?
It's as usual, nothing dramatic, but it's the usual daily haul and pull.
So today we're gonna put some flesh on a very important sets of events that have been happening in Liberia around this issue of and is surprising, these kinds of issues we still discuss them in a trivial way, completely short of the relevance that they have for our country and our international image and relations. I'm not going to go into the issue of locally the damaging impact of drug on the youth because I mean, you can have a whole monthly symposium on,
On that,
on it.
on
But I
that.
wanted us to talk about. We've been talking in some of our earlier programs about corruption,
Yep.
about incompetence, the issue of law and order. And I think this presents one example for us to go into a discussion about what happened. So just to recap, sometimes in October, the public was informed that $100 billion in value of cocaine had been seized at the warehouse in Tompos Village along the freeway in Monrovia, at the warehouse of an importer of frozen food. And initially, the discussion was that some drug cartel imported this drug in the the refrigerator container of this importer, I think TRH or something,
Yeah.
without their knowledge.
Hmm.
And the commodity cleared the port and went into the warehouse. And the guys who own it went to the warehouse and attempted to buy the container. So the container of frozen pig food prices for about $30,000. And these guys offered to pay $200,000 to get the content of the pig food. So negotiation on and off. Apparently, the importer, or allegedly the importer, realized that these guys had put drug in these containers. Instead of cutting the deal, he alerted the U.S. embassy. So there could be a whole discussion on why alerting the
Hmm.
U.S. embassy rather than the national police or the drug enforcement agency in Liberia. But he
Hmm.
did alert the U.S. embassy, and the U.S. embassy brought the national police and the DEA for Liberia into the scene. The drugs were confiscated. By then, money has changed hands. Initially, they said the guy had given 200,000 of, in fact, the negotiation went as far up as $1 million,
Hmm.
but he advanced the first 200,000, and that 200,000 supposedly handed over to the police. And we had this big victory that $100 billion drugs were seized. So this drug was displayed to the public. It was eventually burned in the public glare, and these guys were sent to court. This month, the proceedings at the court ended, and the guys were acquitted. They were declared not guilty, and immediately they fled the country. So that verdict has been condemned by the Liberian government through the Minister of Justice. It has been condemned by the U.S. Embassy. It has been condemned by pundits. Ourselves were surprised of that verdict, and it has carried most of the newspapers around the world and left the impression as though Liberia is a conduit for the transit of illicit substances. But in Liberia itself, the Front Page Africa reported that an anonymous source said that $500,000 was thrown around in the judicial system as bribe, including to the jury, as a result of which the not guilty verdict was obtained. So the judge of the court that handled the case, Judge Dixon
Hmm.
Blamo,
Blamo,
not
Dixon.
court
Yeah.
to
Hmm.
issue a rate against the Front Page Africa, citing them to come over to him and explain why they should not be charged with contempt of the court for claiming that the court received bribe when he claims that they did not receive bribe. The judge also asked that the monies collected from the accused be returned to them. The Ministry of Justice sought an injunction from the Supreme Court trying to prevent that. My understanding is that the Ministry of Justice denied that injunction, so the people money should be returned. But this is the crust of the case. I don't know. There was a hearing at the criminal court see with the Front Page Africa, and the judge laid out a couple of things that surrounding this case. So we'll go into that, and then we open up for discussion. So it's an issue of incompetence. It's an issue of corruption. or both.
Or worst.
So we get to that, but before we get into the discussion, I wanted us to see how some of the international media institutions carry this story.
All trace of four suspected drug dealers linked to a $100 million cocaine shipment after a trial jury unexpectedly acquitted them. Last year, with assistance from the U.S. and Brazil, Liberian security officials, they seized a container with more than 500 kilos of cocaine inside. Four men from Liberia, Portugal, Lebanon, and Guinea-Bissau were arrested in what was seen at the time as one of Liberia's biggest successes against drug smugglers. But last week, a jury in the capital, Monrovia, found them not guilty. The Justice Minister condemned the decision, saying it had brought international ridicule on Liberia. He vowed to rearrest them, but they have since fled. However, Liberian authorities have launched a manhunt for the suspects.
Okay, there you go. That's I think a Nigeria cable channel that carried the story. It's not much different from the way we've carried it. So we
Yeah.
prepared the talking points so we can go into that to
Yeah.
that
Absolutely.
one by one. So let's lift the talking points up, right, and see what we're talking about. So I started out from the Minister of Justice, the Councillor Musa Dean, uh, who was he immediately called a press conference after the verdict and questioned the verdict. He said it was appalling. And what did he say? If I read straightly from it, says that the verdict certainly undermined the collective effort of Liberia and its international partners to clamp down on the international drug trade in Africa and leave the impression that Liberia is a conduit for trade in narcotics from Latin America. So the Justice Ministry also filed a writ of prohibition to the Supreme Court, trying to prevent the judge from compelling them to return the money that was seized in the raid. Interestingly, the four guys who were released, immediately as they were released, they were car waiting for them to flee the country anyway. So they,
Yeah.
they are not,
Apparently, they're not even interested in the money.
they're not in Liberia. They left the money in the government, the executive branch of government through the Minister of Justice and the judiciary, the court. They're arguing why even the legislature is asking for hearings into the issues, and their pundits are having different views about whether this was a bribe issue and this was incompetence. And then the front page Africa comes out with her claims that somebody say $500,000 was distributed. So let's look at what the Justice Minister a petition said. It said a petition, among other things, alleged that Judge Dixon was in error to have ordered the state to return the $200,000. The Justice Ministry also claimed that it received not $200,000. No, it received clarified I received $113,000.
Yeah.
So now we got 200,000 and we got $113,000, a difference of about $97,000.
Yeah.
The Justice Ministry also maintained that the judge was in error because the amount in question does not belong to any of the acquitted defendants. So we'll get into that. I don't know who particularly presented the money to the importer. Then the petitioner was seeking to overturn Judge Blamo May 18th verdict, ordering the Liberian government to return said amount. Meanwhile, the rate of prohibition will be held through a conference on Wednesday. So it was held already. I think the Supreme Court rejected or denied that petition.
Yeah.
That is allowing for the ruling of the court to stand, to go forward.
Mm.
So then Front Page Africa come out with this story about the $500,000, and the judge summons the Front Page Africa publisher and all her reporters to the court to come and explain why they should not be punished
Yeah.
for snaring the court's image. That in fact the jury was bribed
Yeah.
and all that. So that hearing was held, and I will get to where the judge made his case. So this was basically what the Front Page Africa reported on May 19th, that
Yep.
just $500,000 was splashed around judicial circles to influence the jury that unanimously acquitted four men charged with trafficking US 100 million of cocaine. Yes, 100 million, not 100 billion, right? 100 million. Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to use an instance of a case that took place because this trafficking of drug through African countries, especially West Africa, uh, is not new.
No.
And so we got to do a dichotomy between drug issue in Africa and the use of weak African countries as a conduit
Hmm.
to move drugs from South America into the lucrative markets in Europe and in America. So this drug, $100 million worth of drug, certainly was not intended to be sold or consumed in Liberia,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So these guys will ship the drug to a country like Liberia and then try to work it out from Liberia using aircrafts and ships into Europe and into the United States. So in 2009, an interesting thing happened in Liberia. A Nigerian guy by the name of Chibo Uma
Hmm.
uh, made contact with some agents of the Liberian National Security Agency to cut a deal that he will consistently reward them with millions of dollars if they could help to facilitate the transit of drug through Liberia for a drug cartel based in South America. I think it was in Venezuela. So the NSA cultivated that relationship with the guy. They got in contact with the US DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency. In fact, there was a Liberian guy who was experienced DEA officer, Liberian American, who they got in contact with that worked with the DEA and established a sting. If
Hmm.
you want to know more about this story, which we're going to explain in a short summary before we get to our Liberian issue, you can
Hmm.
find that article. It's called "The Sting: An American Drug Bust in West Africa." It's in the Guardian. So
Hmm.
if you go online and find the Guardian, or just put "The Sting: An American Drug Bust in West Africa," you will get an
It
opportunity
should it should come up. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see the whole story. But what happened then was that the NSA set up a supposed cooperation scheme with these drug dealers in order to draw them in. And the U.S. agents went into Liberia purporting as counterparts, potential business partners for these drug laws. So this led to the guys giving an initial amount of $100,000 as prepayment to their Liberian counterpart through a Nigerian a friend. They needed airplanes to move the stuff, so they went to Europe and got a Russian guy who normally flies these kind of illicit flight by the name
Hmm.
of Konstantin Yoroshenko, and he came into Liberia and they were there. They had their plans lined up, waiting for the shipment of that consignment of drug from Venezuela to come to Liberia. And this is something that ran almost a year from
Hmm.
2009 to 2010. And then the DEA and the NSA with Fumba Salif as the lead person was recording all their transactions, the exchanges. The drug deal didn't go through finally.
Hmm.
I think on the day that the airplane was loaded in Venezuela with 200 kilograms of cocaine to come to Liberia, the authorities there in Venezuela seized the airplane at the airport. So apparently the NSA and the USDA thought they had enough material, so they went ahead and arrested Chibo and arrested Constantine and flew them to the United States where they were persecuted.
Hmm.
And Chibo got a 30-year prison term. Constantine got a 20-year prison term. But now, Francis, listen, interestingly, no drugs change hands,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Chibo's argument was that, yes, he's into the drug business. That's what he does in Africa. But he believes that it is Nigeria where uh, he should have been arrested if he broke any law. He has not broken any law in America. He didn't bring drugs to America. He has never lived in America. But still, he was found guilty and he was in prison. In our case, the drug actually did come
To
to
Liberia.
Liberia.
Yeah.
In significant quantity. It was placed on public display, and it was burned. And we have a situation where the four guys are three foreign nationals and a Liberian where they were charged. You see the front page Africa newspaper here around the end of the case. The judge claims that the charges were bogus. So let's go into what Judge Blamo say happened
Yep.
at the contempt. So Judge Dixon Blamo reason that he said despite indicating in the indictment that the defendants were arrested with 200,000, the prosecution later informed him that they could only make available 113,000. So they have an indictment
Yep.
before the court that these four guys handed out $300,000 to the business to try to get the drug. But when the judge, actual hearing with the jury insisting the government claimed that no, it's not 200,000 again, it's
It's 113,000.
113,000.
Yeah.
Why are we having this discussion? So that we look at the substance of why were these people released? Was it an issue of corruption? Was it an issue of the failure of the people to make a case, or was it
Mhm.
both? Right.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have one issue now,
Yeah.
200,000 now during the court,
Dropped to 113.
113,000. Then one of the charges was money laundering and
Yep.
unlicensed possession of controlled drugs, unlicensed importation of controlled drugs, criminal conspiracy. The judge said those charges were wrong.
Mhm.
What his argument was that on the money laundering charge, the defendant possessed that money. The defendants who possessed that money was the money was received in Liberia, so there was
Mhm.
no money laundering.
Mhm.
According to the government's case, the guys handed cash to this businessman in Chompo's village.
So TRH. Yep.
Yeah. So money laundering is basically an illicit movement of money across international borders.
Mhm.
So no money cross any border. So in the legal system, the charges have to match the evidence.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
in a criminal case, first there is a presumption of innocence.
Of innocence. Yeah.
Yeah, as you present your case before the jury is charged by the judge to only reach a guilt verdict if there is no doubt.
Mhm.
You got to find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
We have two instances now. One, $200,000 changed to $113,000. The issue of money laundering is taken off the table because the money never was not laundered, right? What the
Yep.
other people got here? The money in questions was never presented or turned over to the court as proof. So there were even though they were talking about the money, but the government didn't bring the money, right?
Yep.
For the charges of unlicensed possession of controlled drug and unlicensed importation of controlled drug, the judge noted the illicit substance were imported into the country by TH Holding. That means it's the business
It's
that
the
actually
business.
imported it.
Yeah.
And long before it arrived, the Global Maritime Tracking System warned the National Port Authority to thoroughly inspect the container before leaving the port, but it was never inspected. It ended at TH Holdings warehouse in Tumbo Village. So what is it? What are they saying? So you have an organization that is set up in the Freeport and some other ports around the world called the Global Maritime Tracking Systems. They
Yeah.
charge everybody importing as in $250, and you have to get them to give some kind of tracking number called CTN number before you clear your container. This case is leaving the impression that they had reason to believe that that container was carrying illicit substance, and they warned the government before time. Yet the container went through the port, right? So in this count, they said that the guy Conte, who was one of the accused, never had the drug. He never had possession of the drug. And Conte claimed that when he went to the frozen food place, he actually went to buy frozen food.
Frozen food, not drugs.
That's where he carried the money for. He didn't carry the money for drug, even though the whole people of the whole container of people is worth $30,000, and he
Mhm.
presented 200, right?
Mhm.
So the two other witnesses that the judge used in his analysis was this guy called Tello Gabla. He's a publisher of a newspaper, and also he's the president of the Publishers Association in Liberia. He publishes the New Dawn newspaper. Then there's this guy called James Heaney, who is the president of the Customs Brokers Association. So these two guys testify against the government. They're the ones who claim that, in fact, there were prior notice that that container had illicit substance, and the government was aware, but it did not stop interdate the container. Okay, the container was not checked. But it'll be interesting to let our audience know that in every port around the world, the frozen food containers are treated in an expedited way when they hit the port because of the perishable nature of those containers. So there is an attempt to try to move them through the system uh, fast. I mean, that is not to say that if they have received prior notice from reputable people that there is something that need checking in this container, they should not have checked. Even if they were not checking at the port,
Hmm.
they could have followed the container to its final destination to make sure that they open it and verify what was in the container. It seemed that was not done. And these are the issues that were presented before the jury in the court. So the judge ordered that the confiscated 200,000 funds be returned to the acquitted four. And this brings us to our discussion. Knowing what we know, right?
Yep.
Is this a case of corruption or incompetence or both? Let me get your views, so far. So who do we blame here?
I think it's a case of both. And if there's anything else that we can add, I would say it's a case of both and that other thing. There's a lot to unpack in this whole case, in this whole situation. Number one, the security measures at the port of entry. I mean, as you just established, according to the facts that are available, the government of Liberia was alerted that a red flag was placed on this container and that it should be searched. And as you correctly said, yes, we understand that perishable goods are usually expedited. However, I mean the clearance of perishable goods are usually expedited. The government was informed that something is likely in this container that is illegal and that is a narcotic. That should have raised a red flag and it should have been searched at the port, or as you said, followed at the place of destination. So that's a failure, first of all, of the government in terms of enforcing security measures at our ports of entry. And this has been the major source of drugs coming into the country through the Freeport, through planes. There was a story of, planes bringing narcotics into the country before. That's stories of people just driving through our borders, land borders, and bringing narcotics into the country. And the government has simply failed to put into strong enforcement measures at the border to stem the tide of drug flow into the country. I was reading about this, doing a little bit of research on it, and Liberia is not a major producer of drugs. There's a very small amount of marijuana production in Liberia, but besides that, a lot of the drugs that's being consumed in Liberia today is imported, it's trafficked.
I'm seeing from across the
Yeah,
border.
exactly. And I read a paper where they said, look, yes, the number of West African countries, Liberia now is getting on the list. Guinea-Bissau is big on the list. Uh, Guinea and I think Nigeria and Ghana are making, Benin and Mali I'm making the list now. And as you correctly said, these major drug traffickers from Latin America actually try to use West Africa because of a weak security systems at our borders. So they take advantage of these things through bribery, through just simply just bribing people at the border, or just even coming through because our borders are porous, and bring the drugs into the country. And what they do is, even though the drugs are destined for Europe and other markets, part of what they do is that they pay the West Africans who assist them with little bit of with some money, but also a little bit of the drugs that have been imported. So
Hmm.
that's how the drugs then stay into these countries, including Liberia, and the children use them. And of course, we see the effect of
Because
the of
cocaine is
drug.
a little more complicated, to
Yeah.
have cocaine and understand there's cocaine in Liberia that people can buy.
Exactly. So the cocaine is not produced in Liberia. It comes through these channels, and so it's placed on the market. So that Liberian guy, perhaps, or even government officials, if they were involved, who were with this container, maybe the guys who had just thrown them a few of those stuff and they put it in the Liberian market. That's how the West African market gets a lot of the cocaine that's on the West African market, because it's not really produced there. It's definitely not produced in Liberia, but part of the trade is we get you some money and we get you some of the drugs that you can sell on your local markets. So the failure of the government to protect the borders, to make sure that things that are coming in are not illicit, is a major problem. So that's where I would begin. And so with that, to answer your question directly, it's incompetence, but it's also largely corruption. Incompetence and corruption. Wow. That's the reason why these things come through the border. Because again, land border. Somebody comes through local tour and brings something and sees the security guy who brought a guy there and gives him $200-300. He doesn't care. He doesn't even know what's on the container, and it just drive through.
Yeah, the guy
Uh,
talking about $200,000. That's
yeah,
a lot of money.
it's a lot of money. So to talk to it. And the second thing is the prosecution. So from the border aspect of it, I would say, well, before I even go to prosecution, I would say the security investigation, the police investigation of it. The police, whoever were investigating, I think bungled the case in a lot of ways. And Judge Dixon is right to a good extent, to a very good extent. The evidence must match the charges. In this case, I don't think it did. So this guy, you said, Conte said, TRA sells frozen goods. I went to TRA to buy frozen goods. I didn't buy drugs. I didn't ask TRA to sell me drugs. I don't even know drugs were in that container. The police could have waited until this man paid and took possession of,
Possession of the drug.
and
Correct.
then they could have arrested him there and then, because they already had the information of what was going on. They were
We
tipped.
were anxious to get it. That's why he came and brought the money. So they were supposed to let the process play through.
Let the process play. As you just explained in the story with the two guys who were brought to America and prosecuted, the system, the American, they waited until the process played out, until they got sufficient evidence. In criminal prosecutions, everything rides on the evidence. In this case, they bungled some of the things and they didn't get the evidence that they needed. So, are you going to arrest everybody who goes to TRH to buy stuff and offers money because there was, drugs in one container at TRH? No. So, you right there and then you drive a wedge into your case. And I
So one
think,
of the charges were possession of
yeah,
uh, controlled substance. That is out because they never had possession.
they never took
Or
possession.
never allowed them to take.
To take possession. So you can't charge possession when possession didn't take place. The man said, "No, I want to buy beefy. I didn't go to buy drugs."
So one of the things we got to note is that the shipping document
Mhm.
uh, that brought that drug in was the three players on that shipping document in terms of ownership. You have
Yeah,
the consignee,
yeah,
who is the ultimate recipient. You have the shipper,
hmm,
and then you have the freight forwarder. In
yeah,
some cases, they will have a notification for somebody to notify. So
hmm,
the shipper is whomever shipped the container from Brazil.
yep,
Now, considering that they were illicitly moving drug through a legitimate business channel, more than likely it was a legitimate business
yep,
to ship the container.
yep,
The container was also shipped to a legitimate business,
yes,
TRH,
yep,
right, in Monrovia. So it was the guys who actually allegedly had the drug, who went to pay for it, had their name on no paper
hmm,
at all.
no,
So there was no chain of custody except if the police would have allowed them
exactly,
to take possession
yeah,
of the drug. So
yeah,
everything else is what the THR guy, TRH guy said, and what the accused
hmm,
are saying. And so let's go also to the fruit of the crime. Now we got an FOC, the
yeah,
money itself.
So you have the fruit of the crime. You have the money. Understanding is the money was given to TRH people and TRH people turn it over. Like how did the government even
That's
get?
what the government got. In
Yeah,
that kind of, you assume that
yeah,
they signed for it.
yeah. So if you exactly, so if you accuse somebody the of a crime and you say this is the fruit of the crime, or you go to trial and it has been established that no, the guy did not commit the crime, then there's no fruit of the crime because no crime was committed, no crime was even attempted.
So even according to Judge Dixon,
Yeah,
in the proceedings at the court, there was a discrepancy
yep,
between what the
yep,
government claimed
yep,
these guys presented to
yeah,
the importer
mm-hmm.
and what the government last minute finally said they had. So
Exactly.
initially, the guys had said they would give $1 million, but
Yeah,
they made an advance payment of $200,000.
yeah,
Well, in the middle of the case, the government said they got only
yeah,
$113,000, and
yeah,
even this amount was not presented before the
mhm,
court.
exactly. And
It-
my other question is, again, let's go back to the police investigation. Did these guys present physical cash
that's what they said they did.
to TRS? I don't know the level of sophistication in our justice system. Because where's fingerprinting?
Good point.
Yeah, where's fingerprinting?
Good
Where
point.
is even setting a sting operation to see the guys, to catch the guys actually giving money or even discussing the giving of money? What, where is that? I
Good
mean,
point.
so
And this is $200,000.
yeah,
It's just a small company where the guys offered they were
it,
willing to give the
to
$1 million.
give
So
more.
even in that instant, they still had an opportunity to say, guess what? We're not going to give you guys this stuff
Yeah,
until you guys go and bring
until you bring another amount of money.
and start to build the
And
documentary.
if they are communicating through telephones, if they're going sitting down having conversations, that's gold for any good police investigation. That's
Wow.
that's gold for any good police investigation. That did not happen. So you talk about incompetence, it's more way more than that. So if these guys handle the money and hand it to somebody, there should be some forensic stuff investigation going on right there. If
Yeah.
the communicating will give you 200,000 now, will come for the drugs later. Can you intercept these calls? Can you place the person who has already informed you that this transaction is happening? Can you have them record the conversation? Can you go to the phone communications that they had and
Do you know where they even live? These are all foreigners. They're probably at a hotel. I
yeah,
mean,
thank you. Thank you. Go to the phone companies and tap their phones. You have the ability to do that. Go to court and let the court grant you a warrant to tap that communications. You can do that.
because this is a big deal. I mean,
Yeah,
$100 million worth of drug
yeah,
transiting your country and you know it's there.
yeah. It's
Wow.
sitting down in a container in Topo Village. And all you do is say, oh, somebody says somebody give me 200,000. So let's take them to court. Oh, no, it's not 200,000 anymore. It's warranted. When you do that, we have discrepancies in the evidence that you provide to the jurors. Of course, those people have defense lawyers. The job of the defense lawyer is to punch holes into your evidence. So you're already allowing the defense lawyers to drive a truck through your evidence. So these people are not truthful. In fact, they probably stole the money and they're just making up the story. The man didn't give them the money.
Because of
Whatever
reason
the case
doubt.
may be. Yeah. How are you going to prove that? You have nothing showing that they gave the money, except somebody said they gave me money. Man said, no, I ain't gave you no money. So I mean, it's sloppy security work. It's incompetence, and it's also really corruption. Now let's go to the corruption piece of it. I don't have evidence here to say that the prosecution received bribe or whatever the case may be, but we have evidence. As I was doing research on this issue, there's evidence in Liberia of prosecutors from the Justice Ministry being accused of putting forth weak evidence in cases
So that they will lose the case
so
because they
they
receive
can
money.
lose the case because they get bribes. Is this similar? Is this a case of that? It's happened in the past.
But
In
think about
fact,
it.
In
If
fact,
one of the guys over there was a Portuguese or something, so he probably was somewhere. If there is a drug cartel, he's probably was somewhere up on the food chain.
yeah, yeah.
So if these guys are willing to give you $100 million for a drug
Mhm.
that's in your freezer, how much would they be willing to give you so that you can let that man go?
To let the man go. In fact, the former Solicitor General, Seaman Sereno Cephas, that's one of the reasons why he was sanctioned by the US government, colluding with money launderers, drug cartels, and criminals and getting bribes from them in exchange for not prosecuting them or in exchange for pressuring prosecutors to provide weak evidence
So they lose the
so,
case.
so they lose the case. So once they lose the case in court, then it doesn't fall on the justice ministry. It now says, well, the court has decided there's nothing we can do about it. So that is a strategy that's been present in Liberian
Oh,
prosecutorial
wow,
system in a
that
way.
is that is
Yeah,
that is being a big deal.
yeah,
We're in
so,
election year,
yeah,
so there is an incentive for a corrupt person who's looking for money to contest an election. That's why we got the NEC.
yeah,
You are
yeah,
dealing with a drug cartel that is moving $100 million worth of drug on probably their first major try.
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe they've done it before,
yeah.
but I mean, their first major try. These guys are spending money,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and people are gullible. I mean, I'm not accusing
Yeah,
anybody of anything, but it's so
yeah,
suspicious.
yeah.
The way the things were
The
handled.
way it was, look at and then let's go to jury. Yes, there's also a lot of reporting in Liberia on jurors being bribed before in the past. Now, we don't have any evidence now that this juror was bribed, but it's also possible because jurors have been bribed in the past where some jurors were even sent to jail for receiving bribes in the past. Now, has the judiciary put into place any safeguards to prevent against that since those incidents? I'm not very sure of
No, it
that.
doesn't appear that way. At least
Yeah,
they're not sharing that with the public because
exactly.
the situation is still recurring.
Yeah. Now, the thing with Front Page Africa, I would like to go to it. If you want us to go there now, we
Go
can,
ahead.
Yeah. Front Page Africa. Yeah. Front Page Africa alleged that somebody informed them that $500,000 changed hands and to bribe jurors in the judicial system. Judicial system is not the same as the justice ministry or the justice system. So, judicial system, you're referring to the court system. So somebody in the court, $500,000 change in judicial circles. You're talking about, judges, justices, uh, 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 uh,
Restructuring.
staff, the
Yeah.
staff, in the offices, etc. So that's so the front page. I just want to make that distinction firstly, that by judicial, if that is exactly what front page Africa meant, or whether they meant the
At
entire
least at the connotation, it says splash
yeah
around
around
judicial
judicial circle.
circus.
So then you're talking about the judicial branch of government, not a justice and the justice system, law enforcement
But
within the justice system, which the prosecutions and judicial cycles. So then you're probably saying the judge and everybody or their staff were giving money to pay jurors, etc., etc. Now, if front page has information that somebody told them that, by all means, they should publish it. But I think if I were Front Page Africa, I would have gone a little further to gather more information because the outcome is not good for Front Page and the outcome is not good for journalism in Liberia. When these things happen, they undermine the entire structure, the entire system. Sooner rather than later, people begin to think, oh, the journalists can just lie, they can just make up stories, they can just do this. What do I mean by that? Front Page and the lawyers went to court to answer to the judge's call. They apologized in that case and they agreed to pay a fine. What that says to the public is that Front Page did not have any real tangible evidence and they went ahead and published something that might not be true. That is not too good for
yeah,
journalism in the country.
That's a credibility issue
It's
too.
a credibility issue. And we should be mindful not to also just throw allegations and throw mud on people like that. That's just not right. We have a responsibility, in that direction.
But one good thing came out of that, though. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it gave Josh an unprecedented opportunity
yeah. To
to
of course,
explain the
yeah,
issues of the case
yeah,
itself.
yeah. The other point I was going to make is that if I were front page, if I were the editor, I would not have rushed. Of course, being the first to publish and publishing something while it's hot is always a good thing. But also in journalism, we are taught be methodical, do your investigations, find facts and evidence, and then publish. After the case, the jurors are disbanded. They go home. They go into the communities. If I was front page, I would launch an investigative journalism piece, full scale investigation. Even if it takes me a month, 2 months, 3 months, you find the jurors one by one. If you're able to find them or any one of them, you find people in the court system. Find, so if you even come and publish a story without naming any specific juror because they want protection, for example, or you say they were given each juror receive, or one juror or two juror, three jurors we talked to say they got $500 each or $200 or $300. Going in that detail and having that information brings you a little more credibility, and it also helps to correct the system rather than coming up and now giving Judge Dixon and the judiciary the opportunity to get off scot free because you didn't have any evidence.
That's correct.
Yeah. Is it possible that it could have gotten money? It's possible. Maybe they did, but you publish without evidence. So now they chastise you, they punish you. Other journalists in the past, it has a chilling effect on them. How does the public perceive journalists and media institution reports going forward? That could have a negative impact. So yeah, that's the balancing act that I wish going forward our media institution and media practitioners will look at this as well. We have a responsibility to make sure that our profession is protected and guided jealously.
Okay. Hey, I mean, our listening audience, I think this is something that you can evaluate for yourself. One of the things we try to do is to have a fair and balanced discussion about these issues and look at their impact on the greater society. You make a good point about the question of image, the question of how the fact that the outcome of the judge's summons may create credibility problem with the journalists, and also the chances that if there was some impropriety in the court, the way it was brought forward now, it literally vindicates the court and the judge system. So we will do well to keep on following these issues as we go towards elections. So today being Father's Day, and I saw you earlier, Francois, I had said we would
Mhm.
pretty sure, and then we'll run one of our older version of the show on the issue of the lack of vision, the nation perish. We did that a couple of weeks ago, so we will do that. So I'm going to just do a quick track as I promised on Liberian artists. This one is by the late Moses Soiree, very young and promising evangelist and singer whose life ended. I think some 5 or so years ago, he had a stroke. No, he had a seizure.
Mm.
It's a swimming pool and passed away. After this song, you have a chance to make a short statement to us on this Father's Day, what you want to say to the people, and then we'll go to the recording section, and then we're free to go. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Nations bow before you. All the pain, all the shame, we lay them right before you. 'Cause you said that you will perfect everything that majesty, holy King. Lord, we bow before you. All my saints, everything, we lay them right before you. 'Cause you said that you will perfect all the things that you have started. We exalt your word above your name. The things that concern me, you'll bring right before me. Nothing that you should lie. So I trust in you. I trust you, 'cause you are God alone. You are God alone. You are God alone. You are God. You are God alone. I believe in your every word and receive everything by faith. 'Cause you are God. Oh, yeah. 'Cause you are God. You are God. There is no one like you. No, 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 no. You're the beginning. You're the end. You're the Alpha and Omega. You are God. You are God. You are
Alfonso, you remember anything about that Reverend Moses story, the jam of an artist?
So I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I didn't even know that he had died.
Okay, he did
Yeah,
I think 5 years or so ago.
I know that he was. When I learned of him, he was a really good rising star. He was, had a lot in front of him. I'm sad to hear that he passed. And just listening to this music, he's really great and dynamic. Sad
Yeah,
that
it was
we
a
lost
really big loss. Say he
him.
had he suffered epileptic
Yeah.
uh, seizures, and he was in the pool at one time, probably with
In
like
Liberia.
adults around. He had a
Yeah.
seizure and got drowned. He didn't
Oh
come
my
to
God.
hospital, I think
Yeah.
it's
Or pool in Liberia.
no, here in the
Um,
United States. I think he had been living and working his music in Philadelphia. Yeah, he has a
oh.
whole lot of works. You know,
Hmm.
check it out. Go on YouTube. His
Yeah,
music,
yeah, 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 yeah,
his
yeah.
work,
Mhm.
Moses Soiree. Yeah.
Okay. Definitely.
Sadly, there are a whole lot of Liberians who are involved in the arts,
Yeah.
that, and that is athletics also. You know,
Yep.
a kid called Joseph Fambule.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
among the top five 200-meter runners in the world. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
if he was an American, I'll say a Nigerian, would probably have a billboard for him in Lagos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one
Absolutely.
of the things we miss
Absolutely.
about that is that
Yeah.
uh,
But
we do not elevate our uh, virtues.
no, no.
What if you elevate your virtues? One of the great things about America, they make sure to blow the horn about success,
Yeah.
so that it inspires younger people to believe that success lives amongst us. So I
That
probably
success is achievable and that it does matter.
it's
Yes.
reachable. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Faso, hey, happy Sunday. Look, leave us with something that touched your heart today.
Yeah, no. Again, today is Father's Day. So definitely to other fathers out there, the unsung heroes. Fathers do a lot. Um, we don't look for the recognition and the glamour. But I think fathers out there do a lot. Fathers, there are also a lot of fathers who just walk away and not do their duties. Um, so those who do their duties, I think, as you were just saying about success and contribution, those things should be recognized and elevated, so that we send a message out there that is extremely important, for fathers to be around. Most importantly, to support, their children. Now, it's not just your biological. I think we should all work towards really supporting young people globally. By globally, I mean outside of our homes, not just the ones who live with us, because that's just extremely important. That's just extremely critical, and we can do that not simply by just getting the street and giving people money or giving material stuff, but by the examples that we set, the way we live, by the structures that we fight for and try to live in society, making sure that the structures and systems that young people come into are just and fair and give them fair opportunities and a fair shot. So we all have a mission to make sure that that happens. We have a duty, as a matter of fact, I refer to as a duty to leave our young people with communities, with homes, with communities, and with societies that are better than we inherited them. Because we definitely did inherit better homes, communities, and societies as well, by left behind by people before us. So we have a duty, we have an obligation to do so, and to even do it better than it was done before us, given all of the technological and biological advancements that have taken place, from generation to generation. So, but I want to say congratulations to all of the fathers out there.
Yeah, okay. Happy Father's Day, man. I'll catch up with you next week.
Thank you, brother. Let's talk. I will give you a shot during the week so we can talk,
Good.
off the
Let's do
show.
that, man. You have a happy Father's Day, Apostle.
All right, you too, brother. Take
Okay, so as I promised today, I have a couple of events that we're going to catch up with outside this spheres. So we'll run one of our older shows that talks about for the lack of vision, a nation perish. Before we do that, let me let my guy say something.
To failure. We are not. I grew up right here in Liberia and received my early education in Liberian schools. I went to demonstration elementary school. I went to CVA and then to Connington for 2 years before going abroad to complete an undergraduate degree. After college, I came back and started my career right here at LBDI. It was only after the coup and the years of political instability that my career took on an international dimension. At every single place I worked, I left those companies better than I met them. I entered the Coca-Cola company as Deputy Managing Director of Nigeria in 1997. And by 2001, I was President for Coca-Cola Africa, the entire continent of Africa. When I assumed that role, the leadership workforce was 70% expatriates or non-Africans. By the time I left that role, it was the opposite, 70% Africans, creating job opportunities for thousands of Africans across the continent. Due to those results I delivered as President of Coca-Cola Africa, I was promoted to become the Chief Administrative Officer of the entire Coca-Cola company worldwide, with operations in more than 200 countries on all continents around the world.
It's time for our third keynote speaker, who is a heavy hitter. a major heavy hitter, one of the most important corporate executives in the world. He is the Senior Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer of the Coca-Cola Company, which I'm sure you've all heard of. He is the former head of the Africa Group at Coca-Cola Company. Many functions report directly to his office, as in strategic planning, as in people functions, as in research and development. He was born in Liberia and is our third keynote speaker, Mr. Alex Cummings. Great honor to introduce him.
What does it take to manage operations of a giant global corporation with more than $40 billion in revenue, with hundreds of thousands of employees around the world? You have to be focused. You cannot be everywhere at the same time. And so you have to build the right systems. You have to hire the right people. You cannot do everything at the same time. And so you have got to understand strategy. You've got to be able to prioritize. You've got to be able to monitor performance, to hold people accountable for getting the work done. But most importantly, you have to be able to deliver results and deliver results consistently. I would never have gotten to where I got in my career by making promises I couldn't deliver upon. To go from a deputy manager in one country to becoming the global administrator of one of the largest corporations in the world required focus, determination, integrity, and hard work.
Yo, what's up?
How you doing, man? Mr. Ajibon, welcome to Election Central.
Thank you.
It's been a while, man.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, happy to have you, man.
What's the family?
Everybody doing cool. I've been trying to draw you here for a while, man. How you doing? How the family do up there?
Everybody doing okay. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is our main section of Election Central. As you may know already, we have we're going to be discussing two sets of issue in two segments. We have one of our guests already here, Samuel Ajibon. Samuel Ajibon, I got to know him when he was administrator for Big Democracy Group, working with Dr. Sawyer and our community there. I know you've been into technology, IT, and all that in the States, but he has stayed glued to Liberia. So I'm happy to have him on the show. I'll just give him a few minutes to say a little bit about himself, and give us his entry statement. Sam, welcome.
Well, thanks for inviting me to the platform, Cyrus. As you rightly stated, we have known each other for quite some time now. So my name is Sam Ajivon, from Liberia. I've worked at many levels. When I was in Liberia, I worked at the Ministry of State. And then I also worked with the Center for Democratic Empowerment as one of his first associates with Dr. Sawyer. Later venturing into research, where I was involved in the study on ethnic-based conflicts in Liberia, particularly focusing on the conflicts in Lofa with the Loma and the Mandingos, and also in Nimba with the Gio, Mano, and the Mandingos. I later, moved to the United States after successfully completing our research, and I've been here since. I married. I have a wife and 3 kids, and that's just a nutshell of who Sam Ajivon is.
Yeah, that's good, Sam. Welcome, man. I mean, you are one of our outstanding and proud citizens of Liberia. And always good to talking to you. Well, we should really hear as we wait for the other guests to join us. As they join us, we'll bring them into the program. But as you as you saw in the write-up that I circulated, one of the and also coming in from the just short-term meaning of events in our history that dealt with Samuel Fall McGee. One example, who was the first Black person to earn a medical degree, but nothing is said about it. And the official narrative in the United States is that Dr. David Perk is the first, even though he graduated from med school 8 years after Samuel McGee. So we have a situation where probably because of the event of our conflict, most of our history is blurred. Everything about us appear in the eyes of the citizenry to look like Liberia hasn't been anything. We haven't done anything at all.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because of what we see. Maybe it's because of the physical infrastructure of our country, the various societal standards, security, the absence of widespread electricity, as it would be in other parts of the world, pipe-borne water, and stuff like that. And that has permeated for years. So it leaves the impression that is basically where we've been. So just, from your perspective from the beginning, and with the underpinning of vision as the driver of growth and prosperity, if we are relying now today being Sunday on the Proverbs 29:18 that says, "For the lack of vision, nation perishes." How can you reference that to Liberia? If you can give us any specifics, I would appreciate it. You come with a wealth of knowledge about Liberian issues.
Yeah, I tell you this, Cyrus. The war in Liberia affected that country significantly. And when you mention about, Dr. Faulkner, and it reminds me of what we did to ourselves. I mean, take, for example, you had like Rwanda, just to give an example here. They went through a very, very brutal war, civil war crisis or so. Many of the institutions were not damaged, especially infrastructure. I resided at the time of the heat of the conflict. I was in Robertsport, Grand Cape Mount County. And in Robertsport, we had the Tubman Center of Arts and Culture. That building had so many relics, so many historical artifacts. I mean, a lot of information. Do you know what happened to that building? When MPFL invaded Robertsport, they damaged the building. They went in there, all of the relics that were in there, they damaged it. All of the books, everything historical was damaged, right? And this was a facility that, because I grew up in that county, in that city, and we saw, we used to invite, there were lots of expatriates who came to Cape Mount County, went to Robertsport to do research at that facility. But everything was damaged by the war. I didn't see the reason why, you're fighting an opponent who's not in the building, who's not in any of those relics.
Oh, yeah.
But you go in there and you destroy everything. Now, here's another classic example. The first Liberian who was able to graduate from Harvard University, or I would say, I'm not sure if it's the first African, but the first Liberian, P.G. Wallow.
The first African.
Right. B. Wallow. He was the first to graduate from Harvard University. How many Liberians know about that? When this man came to Liberia after his schooling, came back to Liberia, I don't think many people know the history of what happened to him, because this was an indigenous person who came to the West, became educated, went back home, and he was trampled upon.
No, but up until he became a member of the legislature. He was also secretary on the committee that was investigating Charles E.B. King, working with Arthur Barclay.
Right. There are so many accounts on how he was treated as a result of his stature from the indigenous sector of the country. But these are all historical things that have occurred in our country that not many of our people are aware of. And it all boils down to the fact that we have not paid so much attention to these things. And if we are able to go back and do some digging up, we're able to reveal a lot of things that many of our people are not aware of. And I think it's significant to do so.
So, and I get that point. Sam, you were in Liberia in the interim, most of the interim government period and all that. If I'm not starting, right. I'm putting up that image for us to see, because it's the image of the Hotel Africa, which was owned by the government of Liberia, right?
Right.
It was built along with some 50 villas just as adjacent the hotel, and then the Unity Conference Center. I didn't get pictures of those villas and the Unity Conference Center, but this hotel was not destroyed by the war. This hotel, up to the period of the interim government, this hotel was still standing. In fact, how did it get destroyed? And why is it? This is the same hotel, right?
Yep.
And these are peacekeepers having their tents around the hotel. And this government resource, valuable resource, paid for by millions of taxpayers' dollars, was just literally tuned down. I don't know. People went there to get doors and glasses for their house or what. But what's even more amazing, Adivon, those facilities in whatever state they have been sitting there for the last, we're going 20 years now of peaceful administration. Doesn't that occur to our leaders that these are our assets? For example, I went through the Unity Conference Center when I used to live in the Hotel Africa area there around 2018. Well, it looks like it's the wear and tear on it because of lack of usage. But this facility is sitting there that will require not significant amount of money to get it up and running.
Right.
Yet the government institutions, the entire government is moved to hotels for retreats, spending millions of dollars mostly into the Lebanese hotel, when we have our own facility just sitting down the road that not only we could fix and use, but we could also monetize. Right? I mean, what gets us like that? I can't just figure it out. And we're talking about vision. What gets us like that? Because nothing fixes itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. What gets us like that? Let's look from administration to administration. And I want to spare Tolbert the mercy of this discussion, because if we start talking about Tolbert and we start making comparisons, it will appear as though maybe those days were better than these days. Because I'm realizing after working with USAID for a while, it allowed me to travel around the country. Do you know there were water purification facility in every county capital? You know there were telecommunication facility in every county capital?
Mm-hmm.
Almost similar to here. I have a cousin of mine who's an engineer. We're discussing it. He said the telecommunication facilities that he go to inspect here, those substations, the same setup were like the same setup that they had in our counties, not only in the county headquarters, but even in places like Tapeta, which was not the main headquarters of the county. So major concentrated towns had these facilities. This is nothing you can hear of now, except that most people using cell phone. Even that, there are places in Liberia, the larger part of the country where there are no cell phone signals, no reception. Even today in the 21st century. I mean, I struggle with this. I really like you to put some flesh around this thing for me. I struggle.
So recently, the outgoing U.S. ambassador to Liberia came out with a press release, and he talked about the construction of this laboratory in Liberia. I think what $40 million or so.
Yeah, the reference library, right?
Right, the reference library facility, right. Now, on top of that, he indicated that the Liberian government yearly has to shovel up, I think, about $3 to $4 million for the upkeep of that facility, right? So, what we have been doing is that we have been constructing these facilities in the past, and we have not been putting emphasis on the sustenance of these facilities for the future. All right. So the maintenance costs, all of those things are to be included when you allocating the construction of these facilities. What has been our government's approach in trying to make sure that we constructed Hotel Africa for the OU. The OU is going to be done in about a couple of weeks. What happens to that facility? All right. How do we maintain it? What the government was able to do, I remember in the past, was to kind of privatize it. Now, since the war, the entity that was running that facility left. They never came back. Now, rather than maintaining the structure, the security of that facility, we let our guards down, and we have people going in there looting the facility. Now, it's going to cost the government a huge amount of money to be able to revitalize that building. Do we have the resources to do that? I don't know. Even if we were to give it to a private entity to run, do you know how much investment they have to put into that? So there has to be a rethinking of how to proceed with revitalizing such structures. You talk about water treatment facilities in different counties. I know in Grand Cape Mount County there's one in Robertsport. Luckily, they've been able to maintain that, and it was not damaged significantly by the war. So some parts of Robertsport, if they're still maintaining it, they have drinking water, safe drinking water. But again, it all comes back to the fact that whenever the government or any entity in government or interacting with government, when we are making these investments, we have to make sure that we look down the road. And there's also the question about, once we allocate these fundings, right, how do we ensure that they are directed directly, or they are expended directly on the upkeep of these institutions or these facilities? Because if they are allocated, and I worked in government, I know about allocations, and I know how when allocations were made, funds were not directly expended on what those allocations were made for. So whoever is going to be the president of the country after 2023, there has to be a rethinking of government, how we go about expending our resources, how we go about directing those funds, that they are directly impacting the lives of our people. They are directly impacting those entities that they are allocated for, and there are consequences. So I think this brings me to this whole idea of us rethinking government. What is government all about? How do we ensure that government becomes, impactful to the lives of the ordinary citizens? Because it is upon the will of the people that governments exist. So that's I think for me, it's about how we go about reorganizing, rethinking government post George Weah.
So thinking government post George Weah. Guess what? Just to update, in USAID put $30 million, I think, roundabout, into the rehabilitation of 3 water purification plants. One in Robertsport, which I've been to. one in Sanikule. I've also been there, and one in Vonjima. And the model was that they would put this money into the water plant. They put a 100 megawatt solar system there, design the whole stuff, and water and sewer will take over. I think after 3 years, they will transfer it to water and sewer. So after first year, I think they will push 25% of the cost of running it to water and sewer, then 50%, and 75% until. So 2 years ago, that should have been under the control of water and sewer. Water and sewer has not been able to spend a dime to keep the facility going. So the last I heard was that the USAID is looking for private partners and trying to get the Liberian government to agree to give this stuff to a private business to run it. Then that brings the whole issue of profitability, or whether in fact the cost of running a commensurate with the bills that people will pay for water. Why this is happening? In rival sports, the World Bank funded the construction on behalf of the National Fishery and Aquaculture Agency, a huge fish landing facility for those people who have these artisanal canoes and all that, just on the bank of the Lake Piso,
Right.
close to the ocean, the mouth of the ocean. And the idea was that they would process, it would increase their catch. They put a gas station there, it would increase their catch. They have processing facilities. You would think that place needs to use water, right?
Right.
When I went into Robert Sports, the guy's engineer explained to me how a whole lot of people not plug into the water because they also install some kiosks around where people can bring their gallons and collect a 6-gallon container of water for $5 Liberian. Right? So probably for most people, there was no incentive to have the water run directly to their homes and businesses.
Right.
The hospital in Robert Sports was not connected to that water. Just this, that water probably the best pipe-borne water in the whole country. And so just for safety and purpose, you would think that the hospital, instead of using these tanks, will want to connect to that water. They were not connected into that water. The NAFA facility, when they were connected there, they accumulated bills of more than $3,000. So the guys called them off. I noticed a private investor, some guy who somewhere in Robert Sports on a hill, built some real nice resorts. While the guy was building, he had the water connected to his facility. So like you're talking about rethinking, maybe we need to move more into the private sector domain than government managing and supplying basic utility services, and that's a balancing act, because a good number of people may not be in the position to be fair game to receive bills and pay. How do we navigate this? Sometimes the way things are unfolding in different sectors almost suggests as though there is no vision.
Mm-hmm.
There's no vision. Look at roads. You say you got money that have been provided by international donor agencies for roads. Simple road like from EW Junction to Pacopin. That road project had taken the better part of 3 years and have inconvenienced all the people who are living in that belt. In some cases, going to what do you call the place? Police academy were almost like like literally impossible. You got to be passing all between people's houses and places where there were no rules and things before. Even if the rules have been constructed, there are no standards to determine detours. Because even if you're building road, the whole purpose of building road is to be able to facilitate movement, to enhance economic activities and all that. So the process of building road itself should not hamper those activities. There has to be a substitute for that. Let's welcome our guest, Paul Chinople. He's a co-host of the Bottom Line. He's joining us from London. Paul, if you can hear me, can you unmute yourself so that we can bring you into the program? Welcome to Election Central, Paul. My head already hating dealing with Sam Adibon. This stuff trouble me a lot, but welcome. As you know, we're discussing the issue of vision. and relative to how a country progress, feeding off the proverbs that for the lack of vision, our nation perish. So welcome to Election Central. Give us your entry statement. What's happening in London?
Oh,
In
thank
fact,
you.
you should be drinking several pints of beer because the king has just gotten coronated.
Uh, thank you, Sarah. Thank you to all of you for. I mean, I'm happy to join you guys tonight. This is the first time appearing on your show, and yeah, you may see the name Lord Cholope or Paul Cholope. The thing is, King Charles is my good friend, and today there are a lot of street party happening celebrating his coronation. And yesterday, I was invited to meet President Weah, but we're in a party more. I had a lot of pint of beer, so I didn't have the strength to meet him yesterday. So yes, we are celebrating. I'm in the great city of London, and I'm happy to be with you guys here today. By the way, my name is Paul Cholope. My parents from River G. The name alone is only one place in Liberia that name come from. And I'm also here. I'm married with 3 kids. My little background, I'm a computer engineer, and few years back, I transitioned into renewable energy. So I got a business running in Liberia, doing solar panel installation and wind turbines. So I'm happy to be with you guys tonight.
Thank you. Well, before you join us on this issue and interact with Ajivon, I wanted to. There was a photo circulating 2 days ago, yesterday, with the new king of the United Kingdom and all the heads of state who visited. I know I watched George Weah going into London, into his hotel, the Dorchester Hotel, but I didn't see him on that picture. What's the explanation for that? Do you guys know?
Well, we still trying to find out why, because a lot of head of states that have been, a lot of national here been posting their picture with their country head of state, but we yet to find photograph of our president in any of the cycles. So we don't know, but we know he's in London. And also he had a meeting with the Liberian community in London, based mainly the sedition. So at the most expensive hotel, I think you guys might have heard, the Dorchester Hotel, where the rich and famous own. That's the hotel they go into. It's less than what, 15,000 pounds for a single room. So you think about it. So
Well, I mean, the man is president now.
I think Sarah's that photograph, that group photograph, not that I am anyway, but that group photograph was basically the king with the heads of state of the Commonwealth countries.
The Commonwealth
that's
countries,
right.
Right.
That's
okay.
right. Yeah.
Okay. Now that makes some sense. I hope they got some photograph where our president and the king too. At least they will know that the down was worth the why.
And I'm sure just out of humor, if we could just flip Liberia into the Commonwealth country for a few seconds, he would have done so and be a part of that photograph.
Yeah. Okay, now it makes sense now. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's a good explanation, right? So, Paul, here we are talking about vision.
But going back to what you were saying earlier, Cyrus, with the U.S. involvement in the construction of those facilities. If you look at how the United States have been infusing, funding into the country, there have been different stages of their own of how they were, interacting with government. Before, I think it was in the 80s or so, it was a direct involvement where the U.S. would put up the funds to the government, and the government would go ahead and undertake these projects. But the philosophy had changed. They felt that using the government was not very impactful, because most of the things that they were investing in, the people were not benefiting significantly. So the approach had changed, where they were now managing the funds and giving it to nonprofit organizations to do these construction, these development projects. Now, this is why it comes back again to why I talk about us rethinking government. And I hope, because look at it this way: why would funds that are being allocated for the county be sat over by the senator of the counties. Why should the senior senator or whoever they are, why should they sit over the county development funds?
It's unconstitutional.
Right.
Because they shouldn't be executing the expenditure.
Exactly. What I think. I think what has to happen is we have to create a new approach where county development funds are sent directly to the counties. There are structures that are put in place, particularly for accounting and development, that are put in place to ensure that those funds are not just willy-nilly divvied out, but there are processes in place that they can be managed effectively. One of the things I also think that has to happen is we have to now think about the role of the superintendents. You cannot have a middleman between the superintendent and the executive. Superintendent should be in cabinet meetings. The level of superintendent should be elevated to cabinet levels so that these funds that are being allocated for the counties, the structures that are in place, maybe a county commission, whatever it is, those are structures that are meant to put the superintendent in check or held accountable so that during cabinet meetings, the superintendent can directly inform the president what's going on with road construction, what's going on with health, what's going on with education, all of those things, because the superintendent is the direct representative of the president in the county. Correct. You can't create that middle level, barrier between the superintendent and the president through the internal affairs minister. I think whoever is going to run the country has to now reevaluate the role of the superintendent when it comes to development. Those are new thinking that has to be introduced into government, where we can now see how even when it comes to the issue of the budget, the legislature should have a budget office that will assess all of the allocations that are being presented by the executive. Is it feasible? Can we raise such funds? How do we allocate the funds in a way that So how do we stop representative or legislators from interfering in the exercise of distribution of these funds? All of those things have to be thought through to make sure that whatever allocations are done for government, for the people, are directly impacting the lives of our people.
But yes, the reality, Ajibon. What you are recommending is what is the law. That's the law. Because the whole idea of projects, expenditure in the counties falls under the executive branch, and it should be overseen by the superintendent of the county, right? What we have happening in Liberia now is a circumvention of the law, where the legislature is looking at that quote unquote oversight role that they have to almost be like their managerial role. They're almost acting as a board of directors, right? Holding on to funds and getting involved in the actual so to say, okay, that is legislative project here, that is other legislative. I mean, I heard the president pro tem giving a lean excuse to the U.S. ambassador's claim that they were siphoning money in the he was implying $65 million. Yet the money that gets to the county is not nearly that amount. And his explanation was that what the ambassador is not saying that the money is being used by the representatives in the representative projects. No. And no law allows for representative to have project.
Right.
So the county is supposed to have a whole development plan, whether for a month or a year or over time. And that plan is supervised by the mechanism that in government, whether it be the LACC, the same way, the auditing bureau, or the internal audit agency, the same way as the ministries also function in the capital. In fact, the ministries segments of the ministry are also inculcated in the county administration and supervised by the Supreme. All those processes. I'll give you one example. I raised an issue the other day in a discussion with some friends about annual reports. Traditionally, coming to the end of the year, every institution of government is required by law to write an annual report. And that annual report includes what their program for the year were, what kind of money they receive, how they spend it, a whole out budget. The port authority, the ministries, all this today, I don't think is being required. So you search around for the annual report of institutions, you will probably just find 1 or 2%. But those are the kind of things that can be used to evaluate the performance of the institution over time, or to even evaluate the system itself, whether it's in compliance with law. Everything just been done willy-nilly, and that provides opportunity for people to start from money and think here and there. We're all any question. If you go to, even from the governance perspective, the top leaders, you have a practice where the leader may be demanding money from people who are heading institutions. So once he got managing the port, he got to take $200,000 to the president every Friday. The whole system screwed up already. Who is there to say that he didn't take $500,000? Who's going to ask him any question? All he got to say that is the president. Even to Charles Taylor time, they were doing that. Where you had the deputy managing director, the whole big joke where the managing director collects the money and passes it on to his deputy, who was Charles Taylor's cousin, and he would carry the money. And one day he said, "Well, I'll go with you. Let's carry the money." And the man said, "No, you can't go with me." They argue. Only to find out when they finally went there, the whole money he been giving, right? those are flawed systems,
Right.
Yeah, because human beings are corrupt. The reason why human beings exercise integrity is not inherent. It's because there are checks and balances, and people don't want to be named and shamed. People don't want to steal and get caught. So if there are systems in place that will get them caught, their level of integrity will increase. So it come back really to like you said, to not devising a new system, but going back to what is it our system is. Is it working or is not working? Maybe if we found out that certain things not working, then we need to reform them. But there are many things that are being done now that are completely contrary to the books. I mean, I just gave an example with Senator Chair explaining that the money the ambassador talking about some of it because he didn't find out that the money that legislative projects and seeing the people who legislative project. I'm listening to this other guy or this aspirant, Simeon Freeman. He has an interesting interview online. You should check it out, where they are analyzing the budget of the legislature, relying on a law that says that a government employee cannot be paid twice for the same work, right? So once you employ the government, let's say you're a minister of health and you are on the board of something, they can pay you another salary for being on the board because you're paid already as a minister. But the guy explained, looking at making a case with the budget, that if you look at the legislative budget, there are already budget line items that cover salary for all the legislatures, senators, representatives. Yet the president pro tem has a whole different budget that also allows salaries for his staff, even though that staff salary cover under the legislative staff salary, man by man. You know, there's so many duplications, and it suffices. Nobody asks you no questions, no reports are made. Yet, essential areas of public good is unserved. You got a country today where people still pushing water in gallon over the hill in the capital city for people to get water in their toilets.
Wow.
Yeah, 90% of the people don't have access to safe drinking water. LEC provide electricity for only 2% of the population. Nobody asking questions. I'm an international airport. A certain time you go to the airport, current goal. You got a case where an airline is approaching the wrong way, and they announce to their passengers, Brussels Air, say, "Look, guess what? The Roberts International Airport, Roberts, is closed. First thing, we don't have lights, no navigational aid, and we are calling airport. There's no response. So we'll do our best with the few we have to go back to Freetown." You know what I mean, for you to be sitting in that airplane and they make it that kind of announcement. And
so this is what I was saying.
One more thing. Yeah.
This is what I was saying. I'm sorry, this is what I was saying, Sarah, is that we need at the legislature, there is a need for a non-partisan but legislative budget office that the legislature cannot interfere with, that will be able to review the budget that the executive is going to send, even the budget of the legislature, to review such budget and critique it and draw lines before it can even come out. because there's nothing there to say these people cannot do this or they cannot do that. So they have the free reign to do whatever they want to do. But if you have that in place, they would know that I can't have this I can't put this on my budget line. I can do this other one because it's going to go to the legislative budget office and they're going to see it and they're going to report on this. And they can't do anything to any of these people. It's completely independent. So now you have those structures in place that will check even the legislature.
Who's going to make that law?
Well, it has to come from the leadership. The president of the country who wants to make changes in the country, who wants to make sure that you cut all of these excesses, all of these other cutting out graft, will be able to introduce that to the legislature. And if the legislature refuses to put that into law, the president has the constitutional authority to take it to the people to call for a referendum. And then once there's a referendum and the people vote on it, they're able to put that into law. But this is the thing. We have not been able to test all of the, put the Constitution to the test at its extreme to make sure that we are getting results. Even when it comes to this issue of the presidency for 6 years, legislature for 6 years, senator for 9 years, the executive has the authority to introduce it to the people. Create call for a referendum. Do you want our legislators to be in power for 9 years or 6 years? Yes or no? Put it on the ballot. If the people say no, they have to change it.
Paul?
Yeah, I've been following you guys, and you all said it all. And the topic is lack of vision. Now, I guess every government that have come to office, they have a vision. But that lack of implementation is one of the major things, because all of those things, they are laws in the book. But implementation have been a problem in Liberia. And also, we come from a society where the nation is a laid-back nation. What do I mean? Something is what is not right, that you can hold the government or the institution to a fire. That is the civil society and getting the nation out there to say, no, this is wrong. We don't do that in Liberia. So people kind of get away with everything. I heard you guys talking about the superintendent. I mean, the nation can actually rise from today. What is happening in Nigeria, happening in Ghana, the superintendent become a governor. Those positions should not be appointed position. That's something that they have to force the government to do, yet be an elected position for the people to be able to see what these guys are capable of doing. But if you work in the world of pleasure of the president, we're not going to go nowhere. In case this guy have a vision for that county and the president is not in line with his vision, he get fired. So sometimes it's the lack of will of the people to force their government to do something. We elect people to represent us. They lie to us. Then when they get into the house, we don't see them again until after six years. And then they come out with sweet talk. So when a normal society, you'll find out people will rise and say, no, this is not what we elected you guys for. So we get away with a lot of things in Liberia, and that is lack of will of the people also. And these guys use it to their advantage. And this is where we are. Everything is on the book. Why can't it be implemented?
Okay, talking about vision, Paul. I can grasp, because during the Toro era, it was the vision of the administration was well articulated, right? For example, Toro emphasized, he said he was going on an attack against ignorance, disease, and poverty, and created a vehicle called Rally Time. So he created the multilateral schools to address ignorance, and with the argument that everybody does not need to go to college. People can be trained in usable skills, masonry, carpentry, plumbing, and at the high school level. So they opened a multilateral high school in Vonjama, in Nimma, in Lofa. In many places, supported heavily the teacher training institute, Zozo, in Kakata. Then in other sector, they He started building hospitals. While with USAID, I went to Grand Sense and saw the Raleigh Hospital is still there. So even though we're very small, but the communication of the government's vision is still resounded even to the ordinary people. They understood that, and they could see what was being done to be able to roll it out. The emphasis on food security. There were heavy support towards farming. All the BCADPs and all those institutions started to pop out, to go down to smallholder farming, farmers and all that. In fact, the agriculture college at the University of Liberia was made free for students who would do agriculture. What has been the vision of the succeeding governments, starting with Ellen and then on to where that, because you suggest that the government may have vision. Part of having a vision is to articulate it, because the people who will implement the vision are the citizens who have to have a buy-in to ride along. Give me an idea. I mean, we've been around for a while. Even we are older now. It was small. We could understand talk about vision. We're much bigger now. What was my vision? What is we has vision?
Well, let me come in the defense of Ellie here. Before I go to Ellie, we'll see Charles Taylor, because he
In
also
fact,
wanted.
I forgot about Gange, because you were president too. Oh, Gange vision.
Yeah, so Gange vision was war. I mean, I'll be plain blank. He just wanted power, and when he got in there, he didn't.
Oh, you were president already. You were president already.
So there was Gange will say that when he was elected, the war never stopped. He still had people fighting him.
So if whole focus were on the war
defending, just it. Yeah. So now come the great Ellen. Ellen own vision was to jumpstart the parked car, because for 14 years that broken car was there. So she needed a bar, spark plug bar, a new battery and all that. She just needed to jumpstart the car. And that was Eddie's vision. So John starting a car, when the car started, it got in gear, Eddie was done with Liberian. That's what happened.
How did she do it? I know there was a big issue with education. Ellen herself said the whole education system was messy. So once you make that identification, then the next thing we're thinking that you would draw up a strategy to be able to address that. You remember in the early past Ellen era, almost all the students that took the University of Liberia's entrance exam failed.
Yeah.
So can you remember what she set into place to be able to address that? I think there was an issue. There was this guy who was Minister of Health who brought in some kind of different school system where they were privatizing the school system. You remember some of that, Ajivon?
Yeah.
One of those schools got into a controversy later on where they said the lady who set up the school got some kind of sexual issue. But it would be interesting to know what was the whole that model? What was it about? How was it articulated so we can understand how it will address the huge gap in learning that we all say we had, because the school system was a mess. We technically stay with us today.
I think, Cyrus, when you start to talk about the question of vision in Liberia, we have to go back, and we have to go back not only as far as Talbot, but as far as Tubman, because vision in the succeeding presidencies have been largely impacted by what transpired in the Tubman regime, in the Tubman era, because there was a core thing that permeated throughout all of these presidencies. Now, there was Gus Liebenow, is dead, a professor. He talked about how even before Tubman, how governance or government became a point where people were now saw government as a means of accumulating wealth, right? What Tubman did was, in addition to accumulating wealth, he created the veneration of the presidency, right? So even when Talbot came after Tubman, Talbot tried to break this veneration of the presidency, but he had a problem with that because many of the people who he had to interact with, they had seen for over pretty close to 20 some years, they had lived in that environment. So it became more of an acceptance. So trying to break it, he ran into problems with the very people who he needed to work with. And then there was this whole stratum of the society that was clamoring for change, particularly the young people who were college educated. You have indigenous students who also were educated, and they were clamoring for change. How do you balance that? Now, let's move on to Samuel Doe. Again, rather than breaking this whole issue of the cult.
I left a whole lot of people out. Samuel Doe.
Rather than breaking the cult of the presidency, there were also elements from Talbot who were also, who were also agents of Tubman that were in Doe's regime and tried to again reinstall or reinstitute
the imperial
presidency, right? So move from Doe, and so the thinking, the vision of Doe, even though he came to eliminate rampant corruption, misuse of public office, all of those things became even prevalent.
Yeah, it became worse.
So move from Doe to Charles Taylor. Taylor came in. Taylor was completely, I don't want to use the word replica, but you saw Taylor with a white handkerchief, like Tubman waving the handkerchief, talking like Tubman. And it was him reintroducing the veneration of the president. Even the Vision 2024. Above all else, the people, it was above all else Charles Taylor. Everything that the counties, the people enjoyed was as a result of the goodwill of the president.
Of the president, right?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So and you move from Taylor and go to Ellen. I don't see much difference.
I think Ellen changed that a little bit.
Ellen, what I believe Ellen did was she kind of subtly dampened that. But again, the largesse went as a means of the goodwill of the president.
Patronage, yeah.
The patronage system was never broken. She never reintroduced government in a way. Listen, Ellen went and told the people, the legislators are paying themselves. They are cutting his big salary for. You had the opportunity to break that by going to the people. You never did that. However, when it came to approving deals, approving concession, you were sending brown envelopes to pass those concessions.
Yeah, she was rewarding friends and family.
Exactly.
Yeah, she brought her sister into the picture. There's a big case about this Nigerian guy called Prince
Ichuku,
who was given all the public work job because he was close to Auntie Jenny.
Right.
And in fact, I understand one day there's a record procurement process where they cut a $5 million check for him in the morning. And Auntie Jenny ran that check through the system before the end of work day that they got had money. It had never been done before. Yeah.
You come to we are pro-poor. There's nothing pro in his pro-poor in his. This is all the accumulation of wealth. That's all they're doing, accumulating wealth over. At the behest of the Liberian people. Why do people suffer? That's what. So there has never been a vision. Let me just jump back to Ellen. Ellen, with this whole thing about decentralization. My own thought was, in as much as you were kind of taking services, they introduced decentralization as if they were taking services to the people, to the counties. But my thought was, if you were to decentralize, let's see how we can create different centers of power. Empower the superintendent, empower local government, empower education boards, create those things, those things. Because guess what, Cyrus? If we went ahead and tried to reintroduce decentralization, we wouldn't have this whole problem of so many people wanting to be senator, wanting to be representative, because you now have the school board, you now have the city council, you now have the county commission, where people can select to run for those positions, and the community can see their work. Oh, this man was head of our education board. Look at what he did with our education system. Let's elect him to the county commission. And he goes to the county commission, he performs there. Oh wow, he did a lot at the county commission. Let's make him representative. But make those tenure at least 1 or 2 years. And make this election, the tenure for legislators 2 years, so that John Brown doesn't have to wait his entire 10 years or even 18 years to run to be
do a
senator.
job. Yeah, yeah. There's no incentive for him to do good.
Exactly.
Yeah. He's sitting there, he's making that.
So we have to rethink government. We have to rethink government in its entirety.
Yeah, but my question, Ajibon and Paul, is now we're in an election year. So how do we raise that voice in a way that it resonates with people who are trying to be leaders, so that they can forge their thinking towards a whole new set of governance? Because there's nothing to say that people just come in and say, "Oh, I want to be president." I think there are some cases at my time now. I think that when they become president, we're not because the whole system of patronage is ingrained in our society.
Right. Yeah.
It's almost as though there is an expectation and there is a general apathy on the part of the population that people just take in their hurts, that they don't manifest it in any kind of way that protest what our leaders are doing. How can we start that conversation now? A few months to elections. What kind of questions should we be asking the people who run in to be president?
And Sarah, let me chime in. The thing with Liberia, something just weird of Liberian, right? We don't listen to what the people have to say, but the whole thing about numbers, and people seem to run with it then, talking about the issue and the vision of each of these guys that are running. They don't do it. So you in the US, I guess when someone is running for a state house, they have town hall meeting and thing, and people question them. They ask them serious questions. In Liberia, you will have people go on air speaking, people call, and then they will say something different. So when we have in a town hall meeting debate, this is where we raise the issue of decentralization and all of these issues that we're talking about. When you have people coming out to say, well, this is my plan for the country, if that is not in their plan, we raise the voice. Now, what become of this the civil society? Those are the group that actually we're supposed to penetrate to raise this issue, because they're on the ground, they talk to the people all the time. And what become of the journalists in Liberia? These are the key. That's why they are fourth estates. They're supposed to raise this issue. We're in the 21st century and we are still lacking behind all our neighboring country. And those issues should be raised. And when it comes to competition, and when you decentralize, the government is decentralized, you find out that if I'm running for how they call it, representative, or not representative, but superintendent in Maryland County, I will have my own vision, somebody else will have their own vision. And guess what? Whoever wins, if they don't implement a vision in 2 years, 3 years time, they kick them out and bring in somebody new. And that is, you'll find out that competition will start. People idea will start. They will start that implementation of what they actually want to do. So we need to speak to the civil society, the fourth estate, to push these things. That's how I see it.
I think Sarah's the issue you raised just provides a segue into this whole thing about opposition unity. I think this is where now political parties have to create or institutionalize their values, what they stand for, what are their philosophies to the Liberian people, so that the people can look at and evaluate each of these political parties and say, where do you stand on this whole thing about education? Where do you stand on accountability? Where do you stand on social issues? And try to build a constituency based on those intrinsic values that will begin to, create a tent, a wider tent for you, so that you can now be elected into government and start to act on those tenets that you have propounded to the people.
So would it be fair to say, ending this first segment, that at least the consensus is that our leaders have not manifested any vision? Not manifested any vision that
leaders of the past
that they have articulated to the people, because part of achieving the vision is for the people themselves to participate in that vision.
There's something you must understand. One thing, Sarah, just one thing called initial declaration and the reality.
So the always initial declaration, that's not got a name for the paper proper agenda for for prosperity.
That's the initial declaration.
The how
I
is
like
not
that.
the how is not in it. So after that, once the guys get the power, that's it. But well, guys, I think we have a good start. That's the first segment of our program on the lack of vision on nation perish. So obviously, you can see that because we have not really doubled down on what is it we want to do and how we want to do it, and also set a mechanism in place to be able to evaluate what is being done and make necessary changes. We have just been lingering in different states of stagnation or half fix in here and there. I hope looking into the future, we can begin to rethink. I think one of the most important elements of this is education, an informed electorate, gentlemen. So let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll begin the next discussion on opposition unity. Well, we're going to elections now. We have one incumbent president, like how it's unlike the last election where Ellen was getting out of the picture. Now the whole focus is on let's make sure this guy is not president anymore. And appearing to me that this seems to be the vision. So let's when we come on the other side, let's take a big look at what does it mean for the opposition to come together to work for the removal of the current president, George Weah. Is that enough? Okay, so let's take that short break. When we come back, then we can jump right into that discussion.
And the spirit of life calling Mambela, and a voice with the fear of a child answer.
This old man told me that when hunger is taking over a village, to give the older cutlass to one's grandfather and the oldest man in the village to go make a farm because he has experience in making farms is to agree to let the village people die from starvation. A wise old man told me that when hunger is taking over a village, to give the older cutlass to one's grandfather and the oldest man in the village to go make a farm because he has experience in making farms is to agree to let the village people die from starvation.
Okay, let's start at that. Well, in this past week, I think it's on Monday, the supposed standard bearer of the CPP, Alexander Cummings, is giving a speech, and he ends up with that statement that he said, one old man told me that in a village where they're struggling for food, should we take the cutlass and give it to the oldest man in the village because he has experience? To do so is to let the village die for hunger. So there was a big outcry about that this guy is slinging mud against Ambassador Barkai, and he shouldn't be doing that because the opposition is supposed to be united. So tell me, Paul, you guys have been running this discussion more intensely. What does it mean by opposition unity in a democratic, competitive election.
Right. Cyrus, thank you. I think this is a very interesting topic, though. Uh, Opposition unity in a normal country, Sarah, Liberia, I'll say my country is not normal at the moment. So in a normal country, opposition unity, they will go together when it comes to holding the government feet to fire. In recent time in Liberia, there have been a lot of mysterious deaths. Civil servants have not had pay for months. We talk about school education over there. Hospital don't even have drugs. The U.S. ambassador came on to latch our government. Those are where they come together, stand in unity to go after the government. That would be opposition unity. They should come out together to speak on the issue that people are dying. There's no security in the country. That is opposition unity. Now, people saying opposition to come together in Liberia, and the thing is, they all in a tournament. They all want to win this tournament. So coming together as what? For we notice what happened with the CPP. It didn't work because everybody have their ego. So their unity should be where they come together for like the election that is coming on. If you found some reports have been kids under 18 have been registered to vote. And those are areas that they need to come together and say, no, this is not right to hold the government feet to fire. Now, we know that in Africa, people rig election. Nigeria, classic one happened in Nigeria lately. This is where they need to join forces for them to have better poll washers around the place. Instead of them being talking about opposition unity in a way that one person had a ticket, which we know it won't work. Because everyone have the equal, people have their own vision that the way they want to govern the country. So when we talk about opposition unity, I think it should be in that direction, coming together and hit the government on national issues.
So they shouldn't criticize each other. I mean, because that statement was basically coming throwing jab at the.
Sorry, let me give an analogy here. Me and you playing football. I want to win the tournament. You want to win the tournament. Do you think I'll be easy when I play you? There's no way.
Something what you say? Because I think some people might be missing the expectation that we got only one man that we're going after is weird. So even though we're in a competition, but we cannot criticize each other.
You know when I heard that that saying, I thought to myself, I said that old man is still hungry.
He's still on it. He said ain't waiting for you, right?
No, that old man is still hungry because he has not realized that if he were given a cutlass, he would have provided the experience, the leadership, the science, the areas where to farm, and he would be sitting there eating and be very, very,
instead of taking the collar, right?
So the reason, because he didn't take the colors, now they're all sitting there hungry. But let me. So that's how I look at it in a different way. But let me go to the point here, and this whole thing about opposition unity. I think we are trying to confuse the Liberian people or the Liberian voters when we talk about opposition unity, because the process is a democratic process, right? So, but let's look at it again. Is the problem in Liberia an opposition problem? It's not an opposition problem. It's a Liberian problem. So rather than us talking about opposition unity, let's talk about Liberian unity. The Liberian people are going through so much suffering and denial and hardship. It is the Liberian people that must decide whether to keep or sustain the condition, maintain the status quo, or change the status quo.
That's right.
And so I don't see it as being an opposition problem that we should call for opposition unity, because once we take that mantra and start to go on and talk about opposition unity, we confuse the Liberian people to the fact that the people start to think, oh, but if these people can't come together, then let we stay there. No. If we as Liberians cannot come together to change the direction of our country, then we are allowing our own suffering and hardship. So it's not a problem of opposition unity. It is a problem of the media, the social media luminaries change this government. That should be the message instead of us saying opposition unity. And here's another thing. You talk about opposition unity. If the opposition unite to move where, who's going to be the head of that ticket? Once that party comes to leadership, what is there to say? Oh, we can't get John Brown this other position because John Brown you didn't win. All of those things, we are creating another menu for conflict in our democratic process. So I believe that there's no need for us to push this whole narrative of opposition in changing the circumstance of Liberia right now.
Yeah.
What has to happen is Liberians themselves have to stand up and say, we all have to unite to remove this menace from us. And so whoever we feel or whoever we see is competent or is ready, has the experience to be able to change and rescue this country from what is going through right now. Let's unite. Let us all Liberians, let us unite around that individual to change this nightmare and not any this whole thing about opposition unity.
Does it appear to you that the larger Liberian population is actually involved in the scrutiny of the leaders?
Well,
because we have elections, but we also have governance issues. So elections is a process by which we get the leaders. It's something occurred to me that during the election, it's made so simplistic that people don't look ahead to the governance component. For example, the last week or so has been about running mate. So there's been the issue of bringing Jeremiah Kun in because he will give you NIMA votes. Right now, there's a major play to get Young Lee now, and people who are disgruntled to align with the CPP. And I don't hear any question about it's almost as though it's a foregone conclusion that these are the people who are going to lead us. They don't have to explain anything to us or how they're going to do it. We just need to choose among them.
Right.
Yeah. So is that not concerning? Because if the idea is just to get rid of then we are not looking at, what is it that we did not do? The people who are lined up now, which one of them has manifested to us sufficient evidence that they are going to do otherwise? Those kind of questions, am I making a mistake to say that those kind of questions have not been asked and not been discussed?
So Sarah, let me say this. In 2015, I was involved in an exercise that, under this whole saying that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same different result was crazy. So we were part of an exercise or an enterprise that was meant to change that. Our efforts did not materialize because, again, we reverted to the same thing of people doing the same thing and expecting the same result, essentially, because what we had envisioned was to do something different, but that didn't materialize. Now, this is going directly to your question. This is where now political parties have to be structured under philosophies and values that allow the people of Liberia to be able to evaluate them, and not someone saying, I've been in government for so many years, or I've worked at this highest level in corporate America, so I have the competency and all that to be able to do so. No, let the political parties, based on their orientation, based on their philosophy, based on their values, let those tenets be used by the Liberian people to look at the different parties and say, well, I believe in small government. What is the Union Party on? What is their vision? What is their philosophy on government? Are they in favor of small government? Do they subscribe to big government? Those kinds of things. What does CDC subscribe to? Do they subscribe to social? What are they say on social issues? Those kinds of things. Let the party be based on, let the value of the party demonstrate those, and let the citizens look at all of those things and be able to evaluate them and decide. We have not reached that point yet. This is why you now have individuals stepping in and coming out with these initial declarations, as I mentioned earlier, and using them, to advance themselves, rather than using the philosophy of the party. The unity party stands for, when it comes to government and accountability, this is what we stand for. So I'm sitting way in Rawalspur. I'm looking at a unity party, what is still on accountability. I'm looking at ANC, what is still on accountability. I'm looking at CDC. And I said to myself, I think what unity party is saying is something that I subscribe to. This is where I'm going to channel my vote. But it boils down to the party really redefining themselves, selling their values, their philosophies, and then educating the society on what they stand for. That education is going to allow the society now to make that sound decision and be able to change their own circumstance based on their support for those values.
So that methodology, it seems to me, it suggests to me that that's how you determine your vision.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how you determine your vision. And without vision, you wouldn't be because where we are right now is, it looked like the contest is between opposition and the people who are there now. That's the decision you have to make, whether you want we are to be there or you want opposition to come. So opposition is look like it's placed in one big balloon as the thing that you're supposed to support. Without really deciphering what is it that went wrong under this last administration. How can we ask the hard question, or at least make a better determination that, or whomever or whatever group are now ascribing to the position can give us assurances that those things that brought us here will not be there. We don't have that going. So there's nothing to say that a new set of people will not take over and then we inherit the same thing, because all of a sudden when the CDC came in, all they did was that, okay, that's our time now. Yeah, so they took over, hire people into positions without any concern on their ability to perform, and whatever good steps that Ellen has taken were almost literally deconstructed across the board. I mean, the issue of security, or the even civil servants pay and payroll, to the extent that in few short months they had to figure out some kind of way to say, guess what? We just reduce everybody pay. We just harmonize. We reduce everybody pay to accommodate our inefficiency, and even to the extent that today you got people who making $75 who may have been making $300 or before, and without even realizing that if you reduce that purchasing power to that extent, you're also hurting the growth of the economy.
That's right.
So and those key issues are still affecting the society today, but they are not being talked about. The talk is okay. Don't talk against the opposition. The other guys, if you show any indication that you even attending opposition meeting will fire you, like the case of Cooper Creer and the Ministry of Post. So like the entire citizenry and the issues that have gotten us in this dungeon is still on agenda and it's still not on the top table. Yeah.
You know, Cyrus, the brother spoke on something about institution. In Liberia, it can happen. But the situation on the ground where you have, or they're not doing service anymore in Liberia to start with. But then you have another group that sit there that have the microphone. They call them the fourth estate. The fourth estate have a big role here to play. Now, all along for the past 2-3 years, you've been hearing opposition fighting, taking opposition to court, now with the government. But nobody from the microphone will tell you, say, what is the policy of Teron Gonglo Party, what he's running with? What is the policy of Unity Party that will change our...
Gonglo say he was super.
Right. So what is the CPP ANC / Liberty Party policy that will better off our life? They're not talking about that. But
because the contest is all over the country. It may be in varying numbers. Some people will have more people than you, but you should have people all over. That's why to you register a party, there's a requirement for you to have a list of setting a number of members in this county. Now, doesn't it make sense that, hey, whatever members you have in the remotest part of the country, in FOIA, for example, those are the members that you should provide some conscientization and training to, so that whatever polling places at their area that they represent you, or is it that you got to bring a representative from a area to go to all those places around the country? So the argument that been made that many times some of the parties are not represented, it creates an opportunity for cheating. So
Sarah, it makes sense that they come from other parts of the counties, because what happens if you're sending people there, the ruling establishment have a way of doing things. They have loose catch, and it's easier to give somebody money at the polling station to just turn away. So if you have people from other parts of the country that money will not fall their eyes, they help you in that process.
I see that what you mean, but you're coming with the assumption that the people who are in their locale are susceptible to bribes. The people who live in the area, they don't have concern about the party that they have identified with, for the party to take over power, that it's easy for you to give them money. That's what you're implying, right?
So it's easier to identify somebody that is what we call, when you're mouth drinking in Liberia, a hungry person sitting to a pool washer. It's easy in our environment to identify people like that. And I can tell you, the election that took place in Mosorado County, West Durham, they don't won. Some of the pool washer were tempted with $75,000. And because those that sat there, money didn't fall their eyes, they were able to do their jobs.
So let's put some color on this, Paul.
Yeah.
So at a polling place in Monrovia, it's not one party that have representative there.
No.
Right. The assumption is that all parties will have representative, but the logic is that most parties don't have the resource to put people to 5,000 places, right?
Yeah.
So some places they will not have people there. So if you got 21 political parties running, or 21 candidates,
yeah,
in some cases, one party may not have people there, but there will still be a mixture of people at the polling station. Does it make sense? Or is there a case where there will be no observer at a particular polling station at all?
I can give you an example. The 2017 election, I was on Branel Farm. It was one of the polling stations there. ANC had no representation there.
Who else had representation there?
They had one person from Unity Party there, and the government had somebody there. There was nobody from the Liberty Party. So at that polling station, this is where I say, oh, so if you have one person from Unity Party there, and then the government have somebody, what happened? They have supervisor coming, driving around the polling center. If these people driving around, you don't know their intent, and they found out that you don't have representation there, it's easy piece of cake for the ruling establishment, because that's where they'll say, okay, they will take this person to a corner and give that person something. So the opposition unity, if this party cannot make it and the other party can provide 2-3 person there, it make it much better. They share that, it's easy, because some of the places they will learn, some of the polling, the poll watcher were getting $20 a day. $20 a day. Some of the party could not afford $20 a day for three or four poll watcher.
So should there be a political party that cannot fund the exercise of electing the officials?
So
go on, brother.
Go ahead, Paul.
No, they should. If they have a unit, at least they identify those who are going to represent them. It's easier that way. So if you have 5 or 6 person maximum in each of the polling center, now they come from different. So it's difficult for anyone to penetrate them.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, what I think we have been discussing is actually challenges that are besetting our political process. Now, those challenges do they equate to us embracing the multiplicity of political parties, or do they say to us that we have to make sure that we kind of narrow down this whole thing about, creating so many parties that it confuses our people, particularly so since we have a larger population that are not able to read and write, understand the nuances of these things. So then again, we now go back to this whole issue of opposition unity. What do we actually mean? Are we saying that we should now narrow down our political institutions to maybe 1 or 2 or 3?
Because Sam, it doesn't seem to be a contest over ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
So do we make it where we create our process where it based on apples and oranges? So party X, Y, Z. If you associate with oranges, so all of these people who like oranges, okay, you in this party, orange party. All people who like banana, you on this
banana party.
You're banana. So when we go to election, it's going apple, orange versus banana. So we have to again re-examine all of this based on where we find ourselves as a population. Are we able to maintain such a thing? Again, for now, I believe that we don't have an opposition problem. We have a Liberian problem. And so rather than us, every day, media groups talking about opposition to unity, let's talk about how we can unite the Liberian people in changing the circumstance of the movement of the country. How do we unite around changing this regime that is taking the country, into the ground? Ooh. That should be the focus here. And not on the focus should not be on opposition unity or opposition disunity. The focus should be on how do we change the direction of this country by making sure that this regime is removed.
Anyone tell you that we Liberians are doomed to failure? We are not. I grew up right here in Liberia and received my early education in Liberian schools. I went to Demonstration Elementary School. I went to CVA and then to Cuttington for 2 years before going abroad to complete an undergraduate degree. After college, I came back and started my career right here and Liberia. It was only after the coup and the years of political instability that my career took on an international dimension. At every single place I worked, I left those companies better than I met them. I entered the Coca-Cola Company as Deputy Managing Director of Nigeria in 1997. And by 2001, I was President for Coca-Cola Africa, the entire continent of Africa. When I assumed that role, the leadership workforce was 70% expatriates or non-Africans. By the time I left that role, it was the opposite, 70% Africans, creating job opportunities for thousands of Africans across the continent. Due to those results I delivered as President of Coca-Cola Africa, I was promoted to become the Chief Administrative Officer of the entire Coca-Cola Company worldwide, with operations in more than 200 countries on all continents around the world.
It's time for our third keynote speaker, who is a heavy hitter, a major heavy hitter, one of the most important corporate executives in the world. He is the Senior Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer of the Coca-Cola Company, which I'm sure you've all heard of. He is the former head of the Africa Group at Coca-Cola Company. Many functions report directly to his office, as in strategic planning, as in people functions, as in research and development. He was born in Liberia and is our third keynote speaker, Mr. Alex Cummings. Great honor to introduce him.
What does it take to manage operations of a giant global corporation with more than $40 billion in revenue, with hundreds of thousands of employees around the world? You have to be focused. You cannot be everywhere at the same time. And so you have to build the right systems. You have to hire the right people. You cannot do everything at the same time. And so you have got to understand strategy. You've got to be able to prioritize. You've got to be able to monitor performance, to hold people accountable for getting the work done. But most importantly, you have to be able to deliver results and deliver results consistently. I would never have gotten to where I got in my career by making promises I couldn't deliver upon. To go from a deputy manager in one country to becoming the global administrator of one of the largest operations in the world required focus, determination, integrity, and hard work.
And the spirit of life calling Mamela, and a voice with the fear of a child answered, "I am Mamela." Wait. There's no mountain too great. Hear these words and have faith. Have faith.